isolation, hard times and conversations. No one should ever love me like you do. Sometimes my bad decisions defy my false suspicions. No one should ever love me like you do. I'm on this road, you take my hand. Somehow you really love who I really am. I push you away till you won't let go. You grow your roses on my barren soul. Sweet love by you. Sweet love by you. Sweet love by you.
Last night, confidence was shaking. My wounds and my past was saying, no one should ever love me like you do.
This road, take my hand. Somehow you really love who I really am. I push you away till you won't let go. You grow your roses on my barren soul. Sweet love by you. Sweet love by you. Sweet love by you.
I'm a train wreck, I'm a mess. You see the best and worst in me. Still I can't imagine that I've earned your trust. I don't understand where your love comes from. Who am I? Sweet love by you. Who am I? Sweet love by you. Sweet love by you.
Hi, I'm Mike Adams, and this is Lifehouse On Line. Have you ever seen the movie The Shack? Well, it's a movie based on a book by the same name, written by William Paul Young. Well, Tammy had read the book, and she loved it so much that when it hit the theaters, she absolutely wanted to go. Now, I'm usually a skeptic of Christian movies because the production, quite frankly, is usually not that great. The acting is often subpar, and the storylines tend to be pretty cheesy and predictable. But not so with The Shack. The Shack was a compelling story about a man's struggle with faith after a tragedy and the journey that he's taken on as he rediscovers and gains a fresh perspective on God. I highly recommend it whether or not you're a believer. It's just a great story. I think that story, though, hit upon a nerve because we live in a culture that seems to be turning its back on God and abandoning the church in record numbers. Today we'll start a series that addresses some of these issues, and if you're a believer, hopefully this is going to give you a better perspective on what's really happening in the world around you, and maybe how to address it as well. If you're not a believer and you're searching or maybe just skeptical, hopefully this series is going to give you some things to think deeply about. Now, before we dive into all that, let's spend some time focusing in as we worship together. God. Now, I know what you might be thinking if you were raised in a Christian home and the Christian faith. You're thinking that this will be a short sermon because everyone needs God. And while I definitely agree with that sentiment personally, you and I both know that this question is too important to just treat cavalierly. Do we as an advanced civilization, as enlightened as we are with the knowledge that we have about science and the universe and how things actually work, do we really need God? Now, some would say yes with their lips, but they don't always live like it. Matthew 15:8 talks about this, where he says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." Then some people say no, but they find God difficult to completely ignore. For many people, the real question is, who needs religion? And since one is so intricately connected to the other, our tendency is to back away from both. Not because atheism is so compelling and attractive, but because religion is so much less so. Do you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001? 9/11, the tragedy. Right after that, there was a surge in religious fervor and churches were packed. Congress even sang "God Bless America" on the Capitol steps. It was truly an amazing time, and many people thought this might be the catalyst for a great revival in our nation. But that effect only lasted about 2 weeks, and we went back to our lives. Well, around that same time, philosopher, author, and neuroscientist Sam Harris began writing a book called The End of Faith: Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason. That book was a scathing critique of all religion, and he was turned down by more than 12 publishers. They thought it was too soon, and nobody would want to read a book like that was critiquing Christianity so close to this national tragedy. But when he did finally get the book published, it remained on the New York Times bestsellers list for 33 weeks. But Sam Harris got so much negative feedback from the irate Christian community that he followed this book with another book called Letter to a Christian Nation. And that book was a letter to American Christians that challenged the logic of the Christian faith. It went to number 7 on the Times bestseller list. The same year that book was released, Richard Dawkins released his best-selling book, The God Delusion. There he laid out his agenda for that book in the preface when he wrote these words: "If this book works as I intend, religious leaders who open it will be atheists when they put it down." Over 3 million Americans picked up that book, and it has been translated into 35 languages. The following year, Christopher Hitchens released his best-selling book, God Is Not Great, which went to number 1 just 3 weeks after its release. Now, these men, among others, have been dubbed the new atheist, and they became like rock stars on the university circuit. They gave voice to what a significant percentage of the population was already thinking. We don't need God. In fact, religion is the problem. Now, a relatively small percentage of the population actually read these books, but a measurable percentage of the population was impacted by their philosophy. And while only a few people stepped into the atheist column, 7% of the population, millions of people stepped out of the religious column and into a new category called the unaffiliated, or the nones. 35% of millennials are nones. For the most part, they're not hostile to religion, they just aren't affiliated. They're more male than female, left-leaning politically, white, non-immigrants. The majority are ex-Christian, ex-church people. Some are true atheists, but most are just theologically apathetic. They don't know, they don't care, it's not relevant to their life. Their religion is nothing in particular, but their spirituality is very important to them. They're just tired of institutional religion. And chances are, for many of you watching this today, that just described you. This is interesting because people who weren't like Jesus liked Jesus. If you talk to most people who walked away from faith, abandoned the church, or deconverted, most of the reasons that you're going to hear aren't reasons to stop following Jesus or abandon faith. Here's something to think about and remember. You never walk away from one thing without walking toward something else. Now, that's true of every area of our lives, but if you're going to walk away from something that is as important and vital as faith, you better have good reasons. And if you resist the teachings of Jesus, shouldn't you be sure that what you are really resisting is the real Jesus? I mean, the real version of Jesus and God and faith, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about God and Jesus and faith. Andy Stanley says, atheism and Christianity have this in common. People embrace both without knowing what they're getting into. It's very true. But atheism is a complex belief system that logically leads to some unsettling conclusions. For the most part, people don't really embrace atheism. They really let go of religion. They let go of Christianity and they find themselves drifting. Just as people discover things in the Bible and think, now, wait a minute, the same is true of atheism. Listen, both point to some pretty uncomfortable conclusions. But something can be pretty discomforting and still be true at the same time, like a diagnosis from the doctor, or your daughter's boyfriend, or the Cardinals trading a great player. Comfortable is not a truth test. Many people who opt out for atheism know more about what they are leaving than what they're walking into. Now, I have some great friends who consider themselves atheists. So please, don't think that I'm trying to belittle them or any of you out there who are, because many atheists that I know are very educated, very smart, often very kind-hearted and generous people. This part of the series is just setting up what we're going to be talking about over the coming weeks, so please bear with me. It's not an attempt to persuade anyone or anything else, it's just to inform us. So if you're walking away from Christianity and belief in God, the question to ask yourself is, what are you walking toward? Now, I'm all for science and searching for natural explanations to everything. And I take my grandkids to the doctor, my wife to the doctor, and so do you. And my doctor has never told me when I was sick, maybe God is trying to teach you a lesson, and then left that diagnosis at that. If he did, I'd probably go out and find a new doctor. We tend to want natural explanations for natural things. Just because we don't have an actual explanation for something doesn't really mean that there isn't one. In fact, if you're the type of Christian that inserts God as the answer to the unexplainable, you're probably worshiping a misconception or misinterpretation of God. We'll talk about that more next week. So, if there's no God, what are some of the things that there are? If there's no God, you're left with, number one, the illusion of the mind. There's no you in there. Your mind is just illusion. But you're just chemistry and biology controlled by physics. You and everybody you love are just bodies. A conglomeration of cells and atoms and neutrons and quarks. But that's it. Which leads us to the next thing that is left when you leave the idea of God. It's the illusion of free will. If everything is just governed by the laws of physics, then everything is determined. There's no room for will. In his podcast, Waking Up with Sam Harris, he laughs that he is often tempted to argue with his critics, but then he remembers that nobody is responsible for his or her decisions or the outcome of his decision, since it's all predetermined by physics and by chemistry. Theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, who is an advocate of determinism, says in his book Black Holes and Baby Universes and other essays, he says, I've noticed that even people who claim that everything is predestined and that we can do nothing to change it, look before they cross the road. That's an interesting philosophy of life, but very hard to live as if it's true. Well, one last thing that you're walking into the illusion of value. In a world that's governed by physics, there is no inherent or actual value. There's only ascribed or assigned value. Where beliefs are concerned, you can hear people today say that your beliefs are just as good and just as viable as my beliefs. Your truths are just as good as my truths. All viewpoints are equally valid and equally valued. And that sounds good and fine in some aspects of life. But what about in the area of justice? In the world governed by chemistry and physics, what is just what I want it to be. If each individual determines value, then my truth is good for me. My justice is also good for me. But that's a hard way to live because we all want an agreed upon standard of justice to appeal to. You can't complain if value gets unascribed to you, because the moment that you do, you reach out to a world that you say you don't truly believe exists to make your case. The non-physical world of ought. That kind of belief system is unlivable. Now, you may step back and look at what we've just described and say, I don't believe in God, but I certainly don't believe all that. Then you aren't really an atheist. Maybe, just maybe, it's not that you don't believe in God. Maybe it's that you don't believe in the God that was handed to you, the God you grew up with. Maybe that God doesn't exist.
Hey there, Lifehouse. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. I wanted to do a song today by a band called Citizens, and it just speaks to, is it Romans? Talking about that there's no height nor depth that can separate us from the love of God, and it's just kind of echoing that chorus. So I'm going to sing these words over you. Hopefully you'll join me if you know. In the valley, oh God, you're near. In the quiet, oh God, you're near. In the shadow, oh God, you're near. At my breaking, oh God, you're near. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love will stand firm through all my life. In my searching, oh God, you're near. In my wandering, oh God, you're near. When I feel alone, oh God, you're near. At my lowest, oh God, you're near. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. In height nor depth nor anything else can pull us apart. We are joined as one by your blood, and hope will rise as we become more than conquerors through the one who loved the world. And height nor depth nor anything else can pull us apart. We are joined as one by your blood. Sing it if you know it, come on. And hope will rise as we become more than conquerors through the one who loved the world. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love stands firm through all my life. Oh God, you never leave my side. Your love will stand firm through all my life.
Here's the thing. If you don't believe in God or you're on the verge of giving up on God, chances are it's not because you really buy into atheism. It's probably more personal. It's not that atheism has become more appealing, it's that your version of theism lost its appeal, or it doesn't seem real. Or maybe it's because of something that has happened in your life, some tragedy, some letdown. You've lost your faith or are losing your faith because of that. Now think about this. Our purpose today was to simply shine a light on the alternative to belief, atheism. What if you're right and there is no God, no value, no justice, no mind, no you? I hope not. I believe and I put my hope in the idea that there is more, that we are more, but our only hope for that is a God. So who needs God? Maybe you and I both do. So let's open up our hearts and minds to the possibility of this as we pray, and let's not confuse our dissatisfaction with religion or with people in our dissatisfaction to God. So Father, thanks so much for the fact that you tell us, come let us reason together. You understand that we're human, we are but dust, as your word says, or as I joke, we're but dust. God, help us to have open hearts and open minds as we look into the reasons to believe in God and maybe the misconceptions of you that have been handed down to us that we look at rationally and say, I just can't believe that. God, give us faith, give us curiosity, give us the things that we need to give an honest evaluation, an honest look at whether or not you're real. And over the next couple of weeks, God, I just ask that you would just be with people as they contemplate these things and think about them, and that you'd help us to be a resource for them as they try to follow after you. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget that at the end, there'll be an opportunity for you to give if you'd like to help support the work of Lifehouse Online. And we hope you'll join us again next week for part 2 of Who Needs God?
We all have questions about spiritual matters. Questions about God, Jesus, the Bible.
But who can we ask?
Most of the time, we don't stop to talk about those things.
But we all think about them at some point.
Your questions about the Christian faith weren't developed in an instant.
And you deserve more than a quick one-sided answer.
You have a story that led you here.
Maybe an answer isn't even what you need.
It's why we created a place where we can talk about it. Together.
Doesn't matter where you stand. Doesn't matter where you're from. We just want to help you take the next step. And it starts with a conversation. Starting point.
Lifehouse Live wouldn't be possible without partners like you joining with us. There are 3 different ways that you can give. You can give online at www.lifehouse.cc. Just look for the Give Now tab at the top of the page. Or you can text the amount of your gift to 646-832-4848 and use the keyword Lifehouse. After that initial setup, you'll be able to give by simply texting the amount of your gift to that same number, 646-832-4848. Or if you'd like to mail your gift in, you can do that by sending your gift to Lifehouse, P.O. Box 602, Alton, Illinois 62002.